Picture this. You're standing in a kitchen in a modest brick house on a quiet street in Ohio. The coffee maker is gurgling. Morning light comes through the curtains in that soft, low way it does in early autumn. Through the window, a woman is loading a suitcase into her car, humming something you don't quite recognize. Her name is Linda. She's 68. She spent 31 years as a school administrator, and most mornings she still wakes up at 6 out of habit. Her retirement income is $52,000 a year. Not a fortune. Not even close to what the financial magazines tell you that you need. In 3 weeks, she'll be standing on a terrace in Portugal, wine glass in hand, watching the sun drop into the Atlantic. 2 doors down, in a house that looks almost identical from the street, a man named Robert is still asleep, or trying to be, one arm thrown over his eyes against that same early autumn light. He hasn't taken a vacation in 4 years. His income, almost to the dollar, is the same as Linda's. Same street, same income. And by the end of this video, you're going to discover the quiet retirement decisions that separated their 2 lives. Decisions that had nothing to do with luck, inheritance, or some investment secret nobody told you about. None of them required earning more money, and chances are, at least one of those decisions is still completely under your control right now, tonight, before you even finish watching this. Here's something almost nobody realizes until it's too late. 2 people can retire on the exact same income and end up living completely different lives, not because one of them got lucky, and not because one of them is smarter than the other. Robert isn't careless. He volunteers at the food bank every Saturday, and his grandkids adore him, mostly because he lets them win at checkers and pretends every single time that he didn't see it coming. What separates him and Linda isn't character. It's a handful of ordinary decisions made years apart that quietly compounded into 2 different lives. Robert bought his house in his 40s with a 30-year mortgage, and when he retired, 11 years of payments still remained. $1,200 a month, gone, before groceries, before anything else. Linda looked at her own mortgage in her 50s and decided to treat it like an enemy she intended to defeat. Extra shifts, a couple of skipped vacations, every spare dollar thrown at that loan until 11 years before she retired, it was gone. The final payment made on an ordinary Tuesday she almost let pass without noticing. Erase a mortgage payment, and you're not just saving $1,200 a month, you're removing the single heaviest weight most retirees carry. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, housing remains the single largest expense for older households, larger than healthcare, larger than food. Take that number to 0, and $52,000 stops behaving like $52,000. It starts behaving like $80,000 would for someone still writing that check. Now here's something you probably haven't heard framed this way before. Most people assume the biggest threat to a comfortable retirement is a stock market crash. It usually isn't. For most retirees, the quieter threat is simply never running the numbers at all, on housing, on healthcare, on the small leaks that add up over 20 or 30 years. The market gets all the attention, the headlines, the anxious phone calls to a broker. The spreadsheet, the one nobody wants to open on a Sunday afternoon, gets almost none, and yet it's usually the spreadsheet that decides how the next 30 years actually feel. 6 months ago, Linda's granddaughter called and asked, almost shyly, if Grandma could come to her college graduation in Chicago. Linda said yes before the girl even finished the sentence, and she still remembers the relief in that voice, the way it lifted halfway through the question once she realized the answer was already yes. A year earlier, Robert's own grandson had asked something similar, tickets to visit him overseas where he was stationed with the Army. Robert did the math twice, the way he does everything, and told him maybe next year. His grandson understood. He always understands. But Robert still thinks about that phone call more than almost anything else. And it wasn't really about the ticket. It was never having built the margin to say yes without flinching. Peace of mind compounds just like money does. Older adults with strong social ties tend to make steadier financial decisions than those who are isolated, not because loneliness makes people foolish, but because decisions made completely alone, with nobody to talk them through, tend to be reactive instead of considered. Robert makes almost every financial choice by himself at that kitchen table, television murmuring for company more than entertainment. Linda has a standing Thursday dinner with 3 women from her old office, and more than once, one of those dinners has talked her out of a decision she'd have regretted. She calls it cheap therapy, and she's only half joking. Every October, Robert's Medicare letter lands on the counter, gets a glance, and gets forgotten, right next to a chipped mug he's had since before he retired. Same plan since the year he enrolled, mostly because switching sounded like a hassle he never had the afternoon for. Linda spends 1 hour with her reading glasses pushed up on her head, a highlighter in hand, comparing 2 or 3 alternatives because plans quietly shift every year, and the cheapest option 3 years ago can silently become $400 or $500 more expensive today. Stretch that across 20 years and you're talking about a small fortune, lost simply because nobody looked. The most expensive retirement mistakes are usually invisible at first. The subscriptions tell a similar story, 5 of them in Robert's case, though he can only name 2, and he's fairly sure one of them is for an app he hasn't opened in over a year. Linda went through her bank statement one rainy afternoon, coffee going cold beside her, and found 3 she'd forgotten she was even paying for. Freeing up $60 a month doesn't sound dramatic until you multiply it across a 20-year retirement and realize it's a plane ticket to Portugal. Money behaves like a thermostat. It's not about how much heat you're generating. It's about where you're letting it leak out. Now here's the moment that changes how you'll see everything else in this story. The day Robert turned 62, he filed for Social Security immediately, worried the program might run dry before he got his share. Picture him at that same kitchen table, the application open on the screen, a framed photo of his late wife just off to the side, his hand hovering over the mouse for a full minute before he finally clicked submit. Nobody sat across from him to ask if that was really the right call. That single click, made alone, in under 60 seconds, will affect every month of the rest of his life. The Social Security Administration's own data shows most Americans still claim before full retirement age, often without realizing the decision is permanent. Linda waited 2 more years past her own earliest eligibility, leaning harder on her savings to bridge the gap, and she'll admit now that one bad winter, with the furnace bill higher than usual, she nearly panicked and almost claimed early herself. She didn't. The money stayed the same. The choice didn't, and that one choice alone is quietly worth tens of thousands of dollars over a normal retirement. Down the street lives a retired pharmacist named Carl, whose story is almost the opposite of Robert's. Carl paid off his mortgage the slow way, all 30 years, no rush, no extra shifts. A handwritten grocery list still taped to his fridge from decades of the same quiet routine, and by the time he retired, he simply had nothing left to owe. He never made a single dramatic decision in his life. He just never stopped making small, steady ones. One sentence, one lesson. There's more than one road to the same finish line, as long as you actually cross it before the paychecks stop. Then there's the order money leaves your accounts, the piece almost nobody talks about at all. Picture 2 rivers feeding the same lake. One flows steadily, timed to arrive exactly when it's needed, the water level never rising too fast or dropping too low. The other floods all at once, and half of it evaporates in the sun before it reaches the water, the part that goes to taxes nobody had to pay. Robert pulls from whatever account is easiest to reach, without much thought for what it costs him each April. Linda sat down with a tax preparer once, 3 years before retiring, at a small office overlooking a parking lot, and mapped out a sequence: savings first in the years her income ran naturally lower, a small Roth conversion when her tax bracket had room to spare, pension and Social Security layered in only once everything else was positioned. On the exact same income, she pays meaningfully less in taxes than Robert does, every single year. Every one of these decisions, the mortgage, the graduation flight, the October letter, the subscriptions, the claiming age, the withdrawal order, was available to Robert too. He simply never had anyone sit across the table and walk him through it. And here's where the story turns, because it isn't over for him. Last week, for the first time in years, Robert actually opened his Medicare letter instead of setting it on the counter. He read it twice, called the number on the back, sat on hold for 11 minutes listening to hold music he'll probably never forget, and switched to a plan that will save him nearly $40 a month. It's not the mortgage, it's not the withdrawal order, but it's something, and it's his, and it's the first small proof to himself that it isn't too late. You're not behind if you recognized yourself in him tonight. Almost nobody is taught any of this. You're just paying attention now, and that's exactly the moment everything starts to change. Tonight, open your own bank statement and find one expense your future self doesn't need to carry into retirement. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It might be the smallest decision you make all week. Years from now, it could be the one you're most grateful for. If this changed how you think about what living well in retirement actually means, a like genuinely helps this find the next Linda or Robert who hasn't had this conversation yet. If you know someone slowly becoming Robert without realizing it, send them this video before